So I wanted to go over really quick three different blade striking generalities, I'll say. There's so many different techniques and ways to throw shots, right? But I'm going to talk about three basic concepts on blade striking and where you strike on the blade, and the nomenclature I use when I refer to it. So when you hear me say something like, okay, snap him to the head, okay, cut him to the head, okay, cleave him to the head, you'll know what I'm talking about. So let me start with a question that, a lot of people get wrong. Like on this stick, on a sword even, what is the hardest hitting part of the blade on the sword? You get a variety of responses. I mean hardest hitting as in what is the most likely point to knock somebody out, puts the most kinetic energy through the target and displaces them. It's just raw, physics. So some people say, well, the tip of the weapon will be the hardest and the fastest. No, right here, the sweet spot either in the middle or slightly favoring the top. That's the percussive point of the weapon. That's where it should strike at. And then, a few people will say like, well, no, the bottom of the weapon because it's closer to the hand. So let me do a quick little demonstration. It's not perfect, but I've done it a lot for folks, is that you can take your stick and hit this guy in the side of the head as hard as you want to, right? I'm going to do it with the end of the stick, right? You see how far that pel moves? Right? It just jostles a little, right? So that's with the tip of the blade. That's what I refer to as a snap. A snap rotates, essentially a snap rotates close to 180 degrees, right? You extend out and it goes pop, right? It gets this large rotation. So that is struck, snaps are struck with the top third of the blade generally. And part of that mechanic is bringing the weapon forward and popping it, kind of like snapping or cracking a whip. Boom. Boom. You go pop. So that's the top third, or where you throw snaps with. The midpoint of the weapon is like where you cut with. The dynamic on that's actually different. And you'll notice that the power level is different too. So it rocks a pel a little more. So what happens with that is usually you bring the weapon, I'm demonstrating vertically, but normally it's like horizontally. You, instead of the snap where you're like popping like this and at full range, you're usually at a B range and you're throwing and you're cutting to where it doesn't do that like almost full 180 rotation. It does a like 120 and hits there. So boom, and you do like a slight rotation forward and it impacts. Not the full 180. It does here and it impacts. Boom. So that's the cut. So the snap is the top area. You want to snap that shot in with that. The cut, you want to pop it, but it doesn't get that full 180 and doesn't get that little whip at the end. Now the cleave, the base of the blade, right? That is where you use the bottom of the blade as a cleaver. Now, surprising to most people, this is, hands down, the hardest hitting part on a sword. It can be with long swords, great swords too. If you use the mechanic properly, you just can knock people out. These are what I refer to as persuader shots. The cleave is a persuader shot. This is to persuade people to yield the fight when they don't want to take other shots. I often joke, a fight's not a fight if it doesn't end in a short stick. So the mechanics on that one is you come forward with it. Say, for instance, we started still back here. You come forward here, a little maybe past 90, and you smash through the target with it. It's not the whatever it is, 120, 135 angle. It's not the 180 angle. It's like a little past 90, and you rock them with it. So from here, it comes forward, and then punches them in the face. And the reason why this hits so hard is that whenever you're striking with the end of this weapon, really only the mass in the end of this weapon is impacting the target, being driven through the target with just the velocity that you gave it coming in. From here up, it's striking, and it has this forward carrying mass and a little bit down below with it, right? When you strike with the base of the blade, even though it appears slower, it's hitting with the full mass of the weapon traveling through the target, the hilt traveling through the target, and your arm traveling through. I mean, it really is like no effort to just crack somebody. And if you really want to, you're bam. And this is a super ultra light stick. And it might look like it's super soft on that Pel, but a little shot like that's enough to concuss some people. And then if you really want to try to concuss some people, you can. Now, I'm not suggesting you concuss people in the SCA. We don't do that, right? But sometimes things happen. So if you need to up it a little bit more, you get in close and you strike them with that. So that's the difference there. So you got the three different sections of the blades. That's just a way to think of it. You know, you got the bottom third, you got the middle third, and you got the upper third. You throw snaps with the top, you throw cuts with the center, and you throw cleaves with the base. Now the cleave can be used all over the place. It can be used on the side of people's heads. I throw a nasal breaker, which is an offside one that smashes their nasal or their helmet into their face with a fake offside. I'll sometimes crowd people up close and I'll just smash them in the side of the leg, like right above the knee where it knocks both their knees together. It's really hard for people not to take that. But you can see on a regular sword, it's kind of the similar sort of thing. Now, a lot of book fighters, you know, historians, even HEMA guys and stuff like that, you know, you see a lot of swords in the Middle Ages where they're really wide at the base and go really pointy at the front. And they're all like, oh, that's because it was better to thrust with. No, wrong. They were often shorter blades, like the Type 14 was shorter. And that was basically a corridor blade. It was a close combat. It had the capabilities of fighting at range, but when you were in close, you smashed people with this, the right above the hilt at the bottom third, you cleave them, and it hits like an axe. It's stupid hard. Most people don't know how to throw them, so they don't know that that's how it works. So, but you can also see on here, I should have probably gotten a Sharpie. Top third is for snaps. Middle third is for cuts. And then the cleave is at the bottom. So it's important, that particular rotational dynamic, because if you try, say, for instance, to throw a snap at point blank range, and you're gonna cleave with the bottom of the blade, but you're gonna throw a snap mechanic, it's gonna come out here, and you're gonna extend, and you're just gonna you know, instead of using the cleave mechanic, if you rotate too much, it takes all the force off of it. Same thing with a snap. If you try the cleave mechanic with a snap, you know, it doesn't hit worth a damn, you know. It just pushes back. You have no force into the striking area. Same thing with the middle. If you try to hit with the middle with a cleave mechanic, the blade's gonna rotate backwards. You have to impart a certain amount of momentum, and that is through that rotation. Same with snap. And then the cleave. So, might be hard to understand on the video, but it really does work in real life. You know, we can get together in person and work on it some. It'll change the way you look at fighting. Just a real quick note, that also applies for wraps too. Like your standard wrap at range, if you throw it here, right? That's, you know, that's essentially the equivalent of a wrap. It does the highest rotational speed there. Then the middle, if you want to cut, you short it a little and then let it drive in. You don't reach in generally like that because it's actually going to soften the blow. And then you can actually short blade with the back of the weapon as well. That one at the base of the neck is what I affectionately call the off switch, because you use that at wars and it acts like an off switch. But don't do that. Alrighty, guys. I think I'm done on this one. I'll talk to you later.